All right, what's up, guys? We are back with another podcast episode. This week, we have quite a few paddles to talk about. First, we're going to kick off with some new bag stuff I wanted to talk about. We got 2 court shoes that I specifically wanted to talk about because I'm the only one here that's hit them. We're going to talk about some Joola paddles, Honolulu, Vatic, ProXR, new Selkirk, CRBN, Adidas. Like, we got a lot. Let's just get right into it.
Real quick, you said something interesting. I didn't know you could hit court shoes.
What did I say? Is that what I said?
Yeah, you said you got some new shoes that I'm the only one who's hit them.
Oh, well, English, not my first language
still
today,
early.
I guess. Yeah, I guess
still early.
It's still early. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about, I guess I got to move this cup of water, otherwise I will put that all over our nice table. I don't even know if I can get this bag on the table.
Over the mic.
My short arms. All right.
Boom.
So, Justin from First, this all started with Pickleball Will. It was Pickleball Will when we were at Worlds, who I think got Justin into the bag, who then got Braden into the bag, who then got me into the bag. So, anyways, ADV made a collab bag with Will last year, and then that bag, at least for me, it was just a little too bulky. Depends what I'm doing, whether I need a large bag or not. But to me, the original ADV bag could have been better. And then they made a version 2 that is smaller. This is a little bit bigger than a court caddy, which has been my main bag for a while now. So anyways, I bought this bag myself. They did not send this bag to me. I don't have a discount code. I may reach out to them because I'm really liking this bag after I test it some more. But I think if you do find a code, it's like $200 flat. So it's about $100 cheaper than a court caddy. And I think there's a lot of compelling features about it. So going to go over it real quick. First, there's plenty of pockets. If you're listening, this is going to be a lot easier for you to see than if you're listening. But they have a nice pocket here that's easy to access. They've got like a weather sealed pocket here for things like sunscreen. If in the main compartment here, they've got another pocket, which I put my Voltaren in. Thankfully, I haven't needed that a whole lot lately. And then there's a laptop sleeve in the main compartment, or you can put a paddle in there. I usually put a paddle in there. And then actually there's another sleeve here that I didn't even see. So you can put even more stuff there.
Nice.
2 small pockets on the inside. And then if we go to the side of the bag, I actually have the court caddy glasses case because I like this. It's just nice.
The case is nice.
Yeah, it's a good case. But they do have this like cooling compartment that I think you can put some food in if you want. But I just put balls in here because to me it's the most convenient spot.
Yep.
Not as convenient as the court caddy, but still easy enough to access. And then at the back of the bag, if I can not microphone thing over here, there is another big zipper in the back, which you guys probably aren't going to be able to see very well because it doesn't open that big, but you can hold 3 more paddles inside of that. So this paddle can hold 4 paddles very comfortably. And if you don't put anything else in the bottom of the bag, you could probably hold 8 paddles in. You could put a lot of paddles in this bag.
Yeah.
So not being that much larger than a court caddy and being able to hold that many more paddles is nice. And the bottom cavity is so much easier to access. That is, I think, both our complaints about the court caddy is it's so hard to get to the bottom of the bag.
Yeah.
You don't have that issue with this bag. This bag's not perfect. I think there's still things like one complaint I have is this water bottle pocket here. I should have brought a bottle down. I've had multiple times now where I put my bottle in here, which is just like a 16-ounce bottle. And if I'm slinging my bag over my shoulder, it doesn't hold the bottle tight. So the bottle just like flies out of the bag.
Yeah.
So do be warned there that, it holds it, but not tight.
Yeah, it's nice, but it doesn't have like a cinching elastic at the top. They'll squeeze the bottle in.
Yeah. So I do think they should have cinched that. And then they do have a nice quick access compartment at the top of the bag here. I just put things like phone, grips, and there's plenty of pockets in there.
Nice.
Anyways, I won't do like a full, deep dive on this bag since a lot of people are listening to this podcast. But if you're looking for a pickleball bag, I think if you're going in the more premium bag section, this is definitely one you should consider. Being $100 cheaper, that was my biggest gripe with the court caddy. At $100 or $300, I think it's an awesome bag. I think it's very premium. But would I go spend my own money on that? Would I recommend most people go buy that? No, unless you just have money to blow. Yeah. And I think that's kind of how you felt.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same. I still use that bag. It is my favorite bag. I've traveled ever since I got it. Has been my primary travel bag. So I do really like it. But it is just a touch on the small side. This is nice, a little bit bigger. I don't mind the original ADV bag. I don't mind how big it was. I wasn't a huge fan of its like clamshell opening design, because if you're in tight areas or like say you need to get something out of it on a plane, very difficult. So I didn't really like that, but I do like that this is bigger than the Court Caddy. I do wish, I guess now Forward would come out with a bigger, more tournament size bag. My biggest complaint with this, I haven't used this. Obviously, this is your bag. Whoops. I've just from getting stuff out of your bag. This top compartment here is really nice to hold a lot of stuff, but with how this opens and the front being so thin and flimsy that this thing just flops over and falls. And when you're trying to close it, it's a lot of weight to like lift up and zip it back together. And so that can be a bit tricky sometimes. But other than that, I think it's a great bag. Material's nice. It's built very well. So.
Agree. I think if they just didn't let these zippers go all the way to the bottom and it was like the Court Caddy where it just stopped here, then it wouldn't like
And they built up the front of this with a little bit more material because this is really thin here. So it's just really flimsy. If it had like some foam padding or some type of backing there, I think that would help a lot.
For sure. So yeah, I'm going to keep testing this bag, but at the moment, I think this is what I'm going to switch over to. Okay. I'm really digging it. I might still, use the Court Caddy for smaller local stuff, but I brought this to Texas and I loved the bag. So yeah, good recommendation from me. Probably do a review or comparison at some point. But yeah, pretty solid.
Nice.
All right, next thing I want to talk about, the Head Motion Pro BOA shoes finally came out. We talked about these a couple weeks ago, but now they're finally out. So I didn't have a price or anything. And if you didn't listen to that one podcast, or I didn't have a price back then. We have a price now. What's interesting about these shoes is there's no lace system. So if you're watching, they've got these two little dials. You press them in, and you just turn to cinch the shoe down. Super easy. And then if you want to unlace, quote unquote, you just pop these buttons up, instantly loose. Like this, these things are awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think they look the best with these little dials on the outside, but whatever. I can get over that because the convenience, absolutely love them. I just recently bought some shoes from a company called Kizik. These are not court shoes. These are just at-home shoes, but they're literally just slide them on. There is a lace, but you can just slide them on. The heel like pops back up. So convenient shoes I'm a really big fan of. However, I found out that these Head Motion Pros are $200.
Yep.
And at $200 and how fast I would cook through or have historically gone through court shoes, I personally could not justify spending $200.
Do you know what the warranty is?
I don't. I'll look that up really quick and see if I can find it.
I'm a big fan of the BOA system. Like I said, when we first were talking about them, the BOA system's used in a lot of other sports. People pointed out that I missed cycling. It's really big in cycling, snowboarding, all kinds of other sports. So I'm a big fan of it. But in those sports, you're not really wearing through snowboarding boots, cycling shoes, those types of things. They don't wear out as fast as pickleball shoes. So spending $200 on a court shoe that I would probably blow through in a month just is hard to justify.
Yeah, I am looking through, at least on Pickleball Central's website. I could have sworn these have a 6-month outsole warranty, but don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not seeing it on Pickleball Central's website. So it's a chance that it might not even have that.
Yeah.
But either way, here's what I would say. If you are looking for a very convenient shoe, this is awesome. The BOA system is very cool, but $200, definitely not something I'd probably recommend for most people. And for me personally, I'm sure a lot of you know I'm a big fan of the Head Revolt 4.5s. I actually just saw on the Pickleball Central website that they have a new colorway. I would like that colorway. It looks nice. It's like a navy and lime. It looks good. But the Revolt 4.5s, to me, I know a lot of people don't like that shoe. I'm like the one weird person who just adores that shoe. I just don't find these as comfortable. I feel like the foam inside of them is not as padded, and for a really heavy, like a tournament day, my feet are going to be sore after I use these. The toe box is bigger, which I think a lot of people would appreciate. There's more space for your toes. But yeah, it's not that it's bad, but like, this is the tricky thing about shoes. Anytime I talk about shoes, I can only talk about it from my perspective, and it's very hard to tell someone else how it's going to feel on their feet.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, not just from a feel perspective, but I was talking to some of my friends the other day when we were playing, And we were talking about shoes, and I was like, yeah, man, I go through shoes in like 3 weeks or a month. And they're like, you go through them how fast? And they said that they wear the same pair of shoes for like 10 to 12 months.
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm like,
crazy.
So if you don't go through shoes as fast as we do, because that's like what I'm so used to, I would never spend $200 on a pair of shoes I would blow through in a month. But for someone who can make a pair of shoes last a year, and you play pickleball, then maybe this is great. Maybe you like have back issues and tying your shoes is difficult, or you just need the convenience and you don't go through shoes as fast, then these would probably be a great option. But for someone like us or tournament players, you drill a lot, you play a lot, slide a ton, $200 for a pair of shoes that will not last that long is a little bit too hard to justify for me.
Agreed. The other thing I want to talk about was another shoe. So these are the Adidas Ubersonics. So they gave us these, or me these, at the Adidas event. For some reason, they didn't give you a pair. But anyways, I've never worn Adidas shoes, so I was actually pretty excited to wear these. Here's what I would say so far. So I have not successfully blown a hole in the side yet, but if you're looking at my camera right now, you can see where I would blow a hole in the side. Now, I'm not really going to give the shoe a giant knock for this because I seem to be, again, one of the weird people in the world who consistently wears the spot out because I have some weird footwork. Yep. So, you know, that's if you are someone like me who slides on that a lot, like specifically when you dink, be warned about that for the Ubersonics. But the bottom rubber is doing awesome. Like I slid a lot at that tournament in Texas, probably more than I have ever slid for a tournament. And the rubber on the bottom of these is still looking awesome. And these shoes, I've actually found them to be quite comfortable. Like if you basically just told me I wasn't going to blow a hole in the side of these, I'd put these up there with the Revolts for me.
What's going on with your laces up there?
Wow, yeah. If you're also watching, you may see that I ripped my lace again from my weird dink footwork where if you're watching, I literally slide my foot sideways like this.
For people who are just listening, let me just explain. When this guy hits like a backhand dink and he slides his foot, his ankle basically breaks and the entire side of his foot goes 90 degrees to the ground and he just drags it across the floor. I've never seen anyone do that before.
I've seen people do it, just not frequently.
Yeah.
I do it a lot. So anyways, I just thought I'd mention really quick, the Ubersonics, I do like those. I think those are a pretty nice shoe. I'd be a little worried about the durability on them.
Comfort-wise so far compared to like the heads?
I'd put them up there with the heads.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I could wear probably both of those and be equally comfortable.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So those were just some quick updates we wanted to go over, non-paddle related. Now we're going to talk paddles.
Yeah.
So not going to put them all on the table, but I did get most of the other Joola shapes in. So we got the Scorpius 14 and 16, the Magnus 14 and 16, and then the Hyperion 16. So I'm currently missing the Agassi 14 and the Hyperion 14.
This guy managed to grab the worst one of them all to put on the table.
The best one. That's what I think you meant. Scorpius 14. Okay, so let's talk about these. So
yeah.
These have been out for a while now. These have obviously, as expected, they made a pretty big splash when we were in Texas. They were everywhere.
Everywhere.
So hitting them this morning, these are really good. I mean, it's no surprise that the Pro 4 is a good paddle, especially with how many of them are out on the courts right now. But hitting these again, especially like the Hyperion, the 16 millimeter versions feel so good. Mm-hmm. Like the way the ball comes off the face is like such a satisfying, like it's both plush and firm. It's like this really good balance when you hit it that just feels so satisfying.
Well, what I say is it pockets the ball really well and it feels plush, but it has a very dense feel to it. And it's just very, like, it feels like a wall when you hit it. It doesn't feel like it twists. I mean, obviously they do still twist. The twist weight's a little bit lower, but they have a good dense feel to them. And yeah, they're just really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, plenty.
All of them hit very hard.
Yeah, I mean, as you'd expect, they're all power paddles. So I feel like, a lot of people have said, hey, what do you think about like the Scorpius? Probably my guess is that if I was going to take a Pro 4 to a tournament, it probably would be the Scorpius, although that Hyperion was really nice. I liked playing with that a lot.
The Hyperion is probably my favorite of the bunch.
Yeah, which is, for you, that's interesting because usually you don't love the curved head because of how you hit your rolls.
Yep. Yep. I don't know why, but I just don't play as well with the Perseus shape. My two favorites, which I would not have expected, would be the Hyperion or the Agassi.
Yeah, the Agassi ended up being very interesting. I really thought no one was going to care about that one, and the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, this is so ugly. But I actually think it's pretty popular.
I do agree where I think it is pretty ugly, but honestly, what I like about it, which most people probably wouldn't, is I think it doesn't hit quite as hard as like the Perseus.
That's why I liked it.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want it to hit, because I typically have not played with power paddles or liked playing with power paddles that much, and I just like that it's not quite as poppy or as powerful as the others, and it's in a sweet zone where it hits hard, but not like
so over the top.
It's not way over the top.
Yeah. So anyways, as far as the Scorpius goes, I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect, right? It's fast in the hand, and we didn't get to run the metrics right before this pod because we were kind of running behind today. But if you go to my paddle database, which will be in the description, all the stats will be there by the time this podcast is up, and you can find them. But Scorpius, both 14 and 16, felt fast in the hand, felt stable, like great blocking machines. To me, these strike a really good balance of they still hit hard, but not, again, kind of way over the top, and the sweet spot being a little bit nicer is just easier to use, which I really appreciate. So I think if you guys were looking forward to this, Scorpius is awesome. Hyperion is awesome. I didn't get a ton of time with the Magnus this morning. I did hit it a little bit. Historically, that's not my favorite shape in the world, but if you are looking for that shorter handle elongated, the Magnus is now here.
Yeah, and honestly, bigger news for these. So far, durability sounds like it has been definitely improved.
Yeah.
We have not heard many people. I've heard maybe 3 or 4 that have broken, but in the grand scheme of things, like when the Gen 3 came out and it was everyone's were broken.
And the mod,
like massive improvement. Honestly, anything that's honeycomb will eventually break. These ones have been very durable so far. So if you're thinking about picking one up and it fits like your style and what you want, I feel like you're pretty safe at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely doing better. So I've heard a few reports in my Discord. One guy said he broke his in like an hour and a half. And who knows whether it's a dud or this guy just hits absolute rockets, who knows?
I'm very skeptical of a lot of claims I hear in the Discord.
Yeah, like what?
There are some things I've heard many stories of people like, oh, I broke this paddle in like 30 minutes or an hour. I don't know. Until I see or actually hit a paddle, I'm kind of skeptical.
Here's one of the biggest reasons that I've noticed. Even so, like you just said, any paddle is going to be able to break if it's thermoformed, right? I think that is just a well-established fact that no thermoform paddle is going to be as durable as a Gen 1.
Yep.
But what has been a good sign for me is we have a lot of people in our area using the Pro 4s now, and not a single one of them is broken yet.
Yes.
And we have a lot of the higher level guys using them. We have one guy who I was just talking to the other day who breaks paddles very easily.
All the time.
Has not broke the Pro 4 yet. No, doesn't mean it's not going to break. I want to be very clear.
Yes.
But so far with them claiming that it was going to be more durable or that was their goal, that is held up compared to last year a lot better.
Yeah.
Of course, some people might have better luck. Some people might have worse luck, but I am happy to see that because it was so annoying seeing them broken all the time last year.
It was quite literal. If you went to a tournament and you saw somebody with a Gen 3 or a mod, you knew it was broken.
Yeah. Now
it's like more than likely it's not. Yeah. So good on them.
We'll keep you guys updated. We'll see if it, like another couple months now, maybe it's the 3 or 4 month mark and then we start seeing them crush more. I guess we'll just have to see, but definitely better than last.
So far out of the shapes, obviously we only tested them this morning drilling. Which would be your pick?
I think it would end up being the Scorpius 14, but the way that 16 feels is really nice. So on the Perseus, I just had a hard time. Like it feels a lot more trampoline-y, so the power is hard to control, but maybe in the Scorpius it might be a little bit better, and I would then prefer the feel of it. So it would probably be between those two. Yeah. But if we were joking that last year, so we have the US Open next week, and we were joking that I got the Hyperion Gen 3 at the tournament, and it was so hot there that it was not difficult to control, so I just switched to it, because I was like, why not? I could use the extra power. So we were joking that maybe I need to use the Hyperion again this year if we want to win the US Open.
Exactly.
Got to keep the streak going.
Got to keep it going.
Okay, Another quick update. We're not going to talk about these for very long, but Honolulu does sound like they have a foam core paddle coming. I don't have a lot of details on this yet. We have the paddle, but I haven't got status on approval. I have no idea how long they're going to be tweaking it. I don't even really know all the details of the paddle. But the reason I want to mention this is since Honolulu has historically been pretty good with their pricing, this could potentially be the first foam core paddle of the new waves that we've seen that's under $200. Who knows with tariffs and how all that's going to impact things. We'll talk about that later. But that might be the way that we get a foam core paddle that's not $280.
Great. Now you jinxed it.
Yeah, probably. It's going to be $260 now.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Those could be pretty interesting. And then Vatic, they finally got the green light, and all the other Saga shapes for the 14 millimeter got approved.
Nice.
And apparently the Saga Flash short handle, or Saga Flash SH, was the only one that ended up being 0.44. Everything else is 0.43 PB Core approved, so that shouldn't have any sunset period.
Nice.
It sounds like they may just resubmit the Saga Flash SH next year when the time comes to see if it'll pass. But all the other ones are good so far, so that's a nice sign to see, and I'm loving this paddle.
These have been really good paddles. I like these a lot, and they come in so many different shape options that, like, if it will fit anyone. If you can find a shape or paddle that you want with how they have it set up.
You want elongated, you want a hybrid, you want a wide body, do you want a short handle, do you want a long handle, do you want
Curved
16
head,
millimeter?
flat,
Yeah.
everything.
They got it all.
Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, I'm going to have a full review out on this week, hopefully. I think these come out tomorrow, the day after this podcast. But yeah, the Bloom is killing it. Even stock, wasn't loving the short handle Flash stock, but the Bloom was very good. I did end up putting some weight on it just to try it, and I think I like it a little bit more. But yeah, if you guys are looking for a Saga that's a little bit more juiced up, it's more firm, it's going to be more aggressive at the net, more pop, but it's not Pro 4 pop, it's not Paddletech pop. I'd put it below those. It's just in a very nice, like, respectable, balanced area. And the price, this is going to be interesting, especially when we talk about the tariffs later. They dropped the price on the Saga. So it's going to be $129.99 before a code.
Okay.
$119 after a code. And that is apparently a permanent price drop. We'll see if that changes later with tariffs. I asked, they said it shouldn't be. But yeah, that's $129 or $120. Awesome deal.
This is an incredible paddle for $119.
Like one of the best I could recommend for that price.
100%.
Yeah.
These, yeah, the Sagas, even the 14s, like, so I really like the 16s. I primarily play with 16, but the 14 surprised me. I actually did really like them. I would need to put a lot of weight on it to get it up to my kind of range that I like. But even the Bloom, out of all the wide bodies I've hit, and everyone knows I don't like wide body paddles, this one is really good. Out of all the wide body paddles I've hit, this is probably my favorite.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I'll talk more about it in my review, but they
just have a nice amount of punch and pop at the kitchen, but they're not difficult to control. Like, I get a hint of like the poppiness of a power paddle, kind of like it reminds me of a Paddletech, but just so much easier to control mid-court, dinking, drops, everywhere else. So these are great paddles.
Yeah, I think Vatic hit a pretty nice home run with these.
Yeah.
All right, so a couple paddles we'll breeze through quick because we don't actually have these, but I wanted to talk about them. So saw that ProXR had new versions of their paddles, and while we talk about that really quick, I'm going to pull something up. I'm going to check ProXR. Whoops. My iPad corrected to proxy for some reason. Yeah, okay, I was right. So what's really interesting about these new version 3 ProXRs is their prices were about $209 before. This is one of the first times that I've seen a brand like that drop the price of their models substantially on a model that they weren't discontinuing. So the new ones are going to be $149.99, and they have a Sweet Spot Max 13 and then the elongated version in a 13 and 16. Both $149.99, thermoformed, 10 millimeter cell size. So that's kind of interesting. That's kind of been the trend as of lately.
Yep.
So it's just really interesting for them to drop it about $60 when they were, more expensive historically. Maybe they just weren't selling as well and they need to break into a lower market. But it also makes me wonder if those prototypes are about to start coming out in whatever the legit version's going to be, and then those are going to be priced higher. So these will be like the low-end model, and then the prototypes will be the high-end.
Kind of have a feeling it was a bit of both.
Yeah?
I'll be honest, I didn't see anyone playing with these anywhere. I'm sure they, in certain areas, they sold well, but at least in our area,
yeah, zero.
No one plays with these anywhere. And especially for how much they were, it was way too overpriced. Yeah. There were so many better options for, what, $220? Is that what they were?
Yeah, $209, I think.
$209?
Yeah.
Even so, over $200, way better options. So $150 seems accurate. Like, I think that's a fine price for this paddle. So it's interesting seeing a lot of companies drop their prices now with these tariffs. But I'm sure the new prototype paddle coming in, that'll probably be like $260 or something.
$280 even. Yeah, who knows?
Exactly.
We'll see. And then I've seen a new SLK paddle floating around, and I've like heard rumors that it's supposed to be like a bit harder hitting. It seems like people are enjoying this. So I don't know what it is, but it's going to be interesting to keep our eye on it and see if
Brian had one when we were at Eastside in Texas. I didn't hit it, but I saw it. And then I saw James Ignatowicz hitting it in like an Instagram story.
And the shape seems to be some updated shapes. The wide body version looked a lot nicer than what Selkirk has historically had.
It looked like an actual wide body.
Yeah, longer handle, nice curved top. I'm curious to see if they're finally about to start turning things around, because actually one of our Q&A questions is a little related to Selkirk's lack of performance lately.
Yep, I get that question all the time.
So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And then this was an interesting pop-up. So on the UPA approval website, a new paddle popped up for Carbon. The Carbon True Foam Waves 2 14 millimeter. Don't have a lot of info on this yet. But, finally, they didn't take like 2.5 years to release another paddle. I feel like the joke with the True Foam was that this thing was never going to come out. So maybe, now who knows, maybe this is a similar thing again. I feel like the True Foam kind of got leaked way too early last time, and maybe this wasn't even supposed to be on the website. I don't know.
I was going to say, don't get too excited. This hasn't even been announced. It's just found on a website for approval. This could be like 3 years out. Who knows?
Yeah, so we'll see. But I thought that was interesting that there's another version cropping up. So I guess keep your eyes peeled for that, or potentially you're waiting another 2 years.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
You never know with Carbon.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this episode, and that is the Metalbones.
Yeah.
So we'll see if these will stand up and not fall on the table here. All right, so we couldn't talk about these last week. NDA is up. We can now talk about the Metalbones.
We're free.
Okay. These are interesting. I'm going to go over a lot of spec stuff, and then we'll kind of talk about the performance last. All right, first, there are 4 paddles, and their naming scheme sucks.
Terrible.
It's really bad. So they have of the 4 versions, there's 2 polymer cores, and then there's 2 EVA cores.
Yep.
We're going to start with the polymer models. So there's a Metalbone LP. It's called Metalbone LP. $249, 16 millimeter polymer core, and then the bolt system, the one I'm about to show on camera, is not the polymer version, but I'm going to show you how the bolt system looks on that one. They moved the bolt spot up from the bottom throat to the bottom corners, and then they also put bolts in the head of the paddle, and you can put 4 bolts at the head.
The bottom corners have 2 slots for bolts, and the head has 4.
Yes. So that is how the Metalbone LP polymer version works at $249, and then they have the Metalbone 14.5, which is the one Rafa Hewitt has been playing with, and this is, again, another polymer one. The way you can actually tell whether the paddles are polymer or EVA is, one, the polymer paddles have a black butt cap, and the EVA ones have a red butt cap, and then the lines on the polymer core paddles, they're broken up lines, and on the EVA ones, they're solid lines. So anyways, what's weird is on the 14.5, they used the old bolt system. So there's 3 bolts at the neck of the paddle, which again was not a great spot. And I'm like, why did you leave this one the old way? And then it's also a cheaper price at $229. So that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't really understand why they did that.
Yeah, it seems like an odd choice.
And then I forgot to grab the swing weight and twist weight on the LP, but on the 14.5, it's a swing weight of 109. Are you ready for this twist weight? You're not ready. 4.94.
Oh my gosh.
So low.
So bad.
It's so low.
And with the weight system down here, that's not increasing it much at all.
That's not helping twist weight.
No.
So those are the polymer models. You've got 249 and 229, and you have 16 and a 14.5. And then for whatever reason, the 14.5 doesn't have the same new bolt system. All right. Now let's talk about the EVA ones. So there's the Metalbone LPS, which is the red EVA 16 millimeter, and it has the new bolt system. So basically, from my understanding, looking at these, anything with the new bolt system, bolts on the head, $250. And then the swing weight is 116, and twist weight is 5.22, and that's with no bolts.
Okay.
That's just completely stock. The bolts, especially in the head, do make an impact. The bottom corners, the highest I got it to jump to, I believe, on this model with all the bolts in the bottom was 5.9. So it's better than last year, but it's still 5.9 is not a good twist weight.
What was it stock without the weights?
5.2.
5.2.
So about a 0.7 jump.
That's a decent jump.
Yeah, it's better than last time.
Yeah.
And then the other Metalbone, this is the one that Mari Humberg uses. It is the blue EVA 16 millimeter. That is called the Metalbone LP Team. No bolts in it, and it is priced at $209. And the specs on that are a 112 swing weight and a 4.93 twist weight. Extremely low.
Under 5 is bad.
Yeah, edgeless paddles, man. That's so low. I
just don't know why so many companies are trying to commit so hard to this edgeless thing.
I especially when I'm not even going to get into it. I could rant about that for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, names are confusing. You've got Metalbone LP, which is polymer, Metalbone 14.5, which is polymer, Metalbone LPS, no idea what the S stands for. That's an EVA one with all the bolts, and then Metalbone LP Team.
Yeah, the naming scheme is terrible.
And even just looking at them is confusing. Like if you just showed up and we're looking at these, you're like, what is?
Look, we were hating on Diadem for their naming scheme, and don't get me wrong, that's bad. But this is worse.
It's worse. All right, now let's talk about some weird, just observations. So they didn't do the bolts on the side of the paddle, and I did ask them about that. I said, why didn't you do more at like 3 and 9? And they did say they were worried, I believe, about if you were hitting the ground and cracking like the bolt system and then having either things come loose or an area to damage the paddle. So they just didn't feel like it was a great spot to do. And I think they were also maybe a little bit worried about if you hit someone with the bolt there. At the top, the bolts are recessed, so it's like more flush with the paddle. I don't know if I'd say I'm worried because I don't know. It's not great, but it is flush enough that I'm less concerned.
It's flush enough where it's not going to if you hit somebody, it's going to dig into their skin.
Like it wouldn't be a pure bolt to the head that's sticking out of the paddle.
Exactly. But from the side, from the front of it, if you still hit somebody, you're going to hit them with metal. That's still not great. And my concern is people clank paddles in the middle all the time when you're going for an overhead or just a counter or something. If you hit the back of somebody's paddle with that, those bolts are going to do some damage to that other person's paddle. Yeah. So not ideal, but having it recessed definitely helps.
Another interesting thing that they were even aware of this at the event, so I'm really confused why they chose to market it this way, but they are very well aware that this face is not raw carbon fiber. They said that at the event. These are not raw carbon fiber paddles. These are spray-on grit paddles. However, on Pickleball Central's website, when you look at the Metalbone, there's a lot of, these are raw carbon fiber plus Spin Blade Max, which is their spray-on grit, which does, I haven't got to put it under a microscope yet, but it does feel a little bit different.
There was a lot of questions at the event about the texture and the grit, and I feel like we never really got a great answer on it because it's not raw carbon fiber, but they really wouldn't say that it's exactly just spray grit. And he kept saying it was sandblasted texture. And I don't know. It was just a lot of marketing jargon, I feel like.
Yeah. So just be aware that these aren't raw carbon. The longevity of the grit is very not known.
Yeah.
So take that for what you will. Here's what's interesting. One of the most interesting things, we're going to take the polymer paddle out of here. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think of these bunch, it's going to be the ones people are least interested in.
Yeah.
Okay. First thing we got to go over with the EVA ones, these are not USAP approved. These are only UPA-A approved. The polymer ones are USAP approved, to my knowledge. EVA ones, they are not. Sounded like they were going to submit it, but as of right now, they are not.
Yep.
Here's what's interesting. These are built, I'll put up a picture on screen, just like a Ripple. The core of these looks just like a Ripple.
Yeah, they had a cut in half down the middle, top one, or sandwich style.
Yeah.
It was cut in half so we could see the core.
Yeah, so seeing that it looks just like a Ripple, I'm like, okay, is this going to pass PB Core? And when I found out, I spoke to Jason this morning and asked about, I was like, these are pretty hot. I was like, how did they pass? So what's interesting is, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, so this is more on me, but these passed the interim certification, which only has to pass their deflection test, which, as we know, deflection on both USAP and probably UPA-A is easier to pass than something like PB Core. These did not have to go through the new ABI protocol, which is their break-in test, and it also didn't have to do their PEF, which is just a PB Core test. So that makes a lot more sense to me why these are passing.
Yep.
I was like, okay, you haven't gone through the full suite of certification, and come September 1st this year, these paddles will have to go through that, and then I wonder if they're going to pass.
Oh, man, I don't know. Based on how they hit, and just talking with other people, I'd be very surprised if they did.
Agreed.
Shocked.
And the other part about, this was a concern with the Ripple, but since the Ripple really never came out, it didn't get as probably talked about as much. But since these have the vertical rib structure and there's foam sandwiched between, I don't know how that's not a violation of Gearbox's patent.
Dude, I know. That was the second they brought out that cut open one, everyone was like, huh?
Gearbox?
What? It literally, I genuinely thought that he had a gearbox cut open. I was like, why does this guy have a gearbox? And then I realized it was one of the metal bones cut open. It looks exactly like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. Maybe there's some technicality with the patent, but I know quite a few companies who have looked at that patent and basically gone, yeah, if you're going to use carbon fiber tubes running vertically and foam somewhere in between them, you're out of luck.
Yep.
So maybe they found something, I don't know, but that was a thought that came through my head.
The other thing is, when we were there, so far, based on hitting a few different units while we were at the event, we started the event at the lab down in Austin. We hit around for a little bit. Then we moved to an Airbnb, and then that had a court, and then we hit some more there. They played completely different based on unit to unit. They gave us paddles. Everyone had different paddles, so we kind of hitting around with other people's paddles. Some were super tingy, like this one, our Mari Humberg 16
LP
mil.
team.
LP team. Super tingy. It just feels really weird. It's really loud. And then some others sounded really deep and kind of dense, and they just played completely different. Some people's were insanely hot, like Braden was hitting one that was crazy hot. And then at the lab, I hit one that was like, I can't get this ball to go anywhere. So consistency in these paddles seems to be an issue so far.
Yeah, we've definitely heard different people talking about, just in some group chats, like, mine's like feeling this way. And at the event, I mean, specifically, I remember when we got to the Airbnb, I was hitting my blue one that I got, and I was like, how? This doesn't even feel like EVA. It felt so tingy, kind of like not as much as the old Metalbone, but if you've hit one of those, it had that like tingy vibrating feel, and I've never had an EVA foam paddle feel this way, so I don't understand why this one feels that way. And then other people be like, oh, mine doesn't really feel like it. But yeah, it's very tingy feeling, which is just odd. There's some consistency from paddle to paddle that feels a little odd.
Also, real quick, I just want to throw in there something from the event. John had opened one and took the wrapping off, a brand new paddle, played one game, and there was a crack in the side of the edge of the paddle. And we were like, that's not a good sign for being a brand new paddle and playing one game. And we showed it to one of the guys, and they're like, yeah, that's going to happen. What? And then also people were saying like, hey, these are kind of changing. Like, this one feels way different from the one at the lab. And they're like, yeah, that's normal. They're going to change. Also, something that we've kind of discussed is not a great thing with paddles, and they just seem to either not care or acknowledge that that's how these are going to be. So who knows? In a few weeks of playing with these, they could be way different from what we have now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, and these are all kind of first impressions. We've had about 2, maybe 3 sessions where we've gotten to hit these here. So, there may be some more content at a later time and things may change.
That's pertains to the EVA ones. The honeycomb ones have been pretty consistent so far.
Agreed. Those, it's all the EVA one we're talking about because I think those are going to be the ones that probably catch a little bit more attention. So, okay, let's talk about how these perform. First, let's start with the blue one.
Yep.
So first, stability on these, as the twistaway would suggest, awful.
Horrendous.
Like the sweet spot feels like it's the size of a dime. It's brutal. And I even have weight, all of 3 9/2 gram on the edge of my paddle from top to bottom, and it's still not great. It's better, but it's not good.
If you didn't tell me you put weight on that, I would imagine it was stock. It does not play well at all, in my opinion, even with weight.
Yeah, so the blue one, even though the only difference allegedly is that it's bolts versus no bolts, they don't feel the same to me at all.
There has to be something else different, whether that's intentionally designed or just like unit error. It feels completely different from the one with bolts, even when we take the bolts out.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This, out of all of them, this is by far my least favorite.
Yeah, the blue one has not been my favorite as of right now.
I had highest hopes for this one because it had no bolts, would be easiest to customize with your own weight, but I don't know, everything I tried, different weight setups, playing with it just felt horrible no matter what.
And then with the red one, so I've got 6 bolts in this right now. I've got all the bottom slots filled, and then I've got 2 in the top slot. This thing's a cannon. I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it hits very, very hard. Talking to other reviewers, they're getting numbers. We haven't ran any Popper Power numbers, but they're getting numbers that are around a mod, around original Gen 3. And even as we've played with it, with the few sessions we've had, the first session I went, it still kind of has that tingy feel, and the sweet spot is not great. But today when we went back and hit it again, sweet spot's still smaller, but it definitely felt bigger than the other day. And that tingy feel kind of started going away. And I wasn't even trying to swing that hard because I didn't want to hurt you. But I felt like if I just wanted to finish anything, a drive, whatever, it would not be hard to do with this.
No. We hit it side by side with a mod, and it hits just as hard, if not harder. So if I had to say one good thing about this paddle, it's that it hits very hard. But that is the last and only thing I'd say, because everything else is downhill. The sweet spot is terrible. Stability is terrible. It's just everything is worse other than it hits hard.
Which is funny because I believe I forgot to go look before this podcast, but I think I have a line in my original Metalbone review that went, look, if something's not going to feel good, you expect it to either have a large sweet spot or it just hits really hard to compensate for it not feeling good. Well, that got taken pretty literally because, this hits hard, but the sweet spot's still small.
Yeah. At least feel off of the face. It feels more plush and springy
than the blue
one. And so I can at least get along with that. But the power drop off and the sweet spot, how it feels, is just so inconsistent that hitting drops is not great. Some will just get launched to the sky and some will just die. And then it drives. The spin's not amazing.
It's like, okay.
It's okay. I don't know. I would find it so difficult to play with this paddle. The only thing I could do is rip the ball, hope it gets popped up, and finish it.
Yeah.
Because everything else playing with this, resets, dinking, I did not like it at all.
And the fact that I feel like this session, it's changing a little bit. I'm like, man, in 2 months, what's it going to be?
Yeah. Well, and if, I don't know what John did, or if he had hit the ground or clank paddles, whatever, the edge kind of cracking in one game. Obviously, that's only one unit. What's going to happen in a few months of play with this? And things just going to fall apart.
And I believe Rafa, Pickleball Tech Dude, he had actually mentioned that the metal system holding the bolts,
the housing
actually came out of his paddle.
Yep.
And just broke. So durability is not looking great.
Yeah.
Durability is not looking great. And when you're charging $250, that's why I was hoping the blue one was going to be interesting, because it kind of took out the gimmick, I guess, and you got it for a cheaper price.
Yeah.
And maybe break-in fixes all of these. Maybe with enough time, some of these like issues kind of sort themselves out and they feel better, but the initial impression was not very positive. And the fact that it's only UPA-A approved and it has the design of a ripple, which historically had some issues. I just feel like this is a combination that's going to result in a problem one way or another.
Yep. And it's spray grit.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I'll say about them is that the Metalbone has always been aesthetically pleasing. I think like design-wise, not a huge fan of these lines on the paddle, but everything else, I think they look nice.
Yeah.
And they're elongated. And then that's where it all ends. Like I can't say any more nice things about this paddle.
What I will say, I think they called it low poly design, these like lines here. I will say the handle, the way it's constructed, and this throat actually does feel quite premium. I probably one of the best feeling areas I have felt.
Construction feels very premium at the throat. Otherwise, everything else, like, again, the edge cracking, and these are going to scuff really bad. Who knows if they're going to chip? I can't quite tell. It's not great. But yeah, they call this a low poly design. It was a monocoque construction, which if anyone's kind of knows anything about cars, that's a really common terminology in cars. It's like the whole chassis is a single carbon tub. It's a piece called a monocoque. So they use that design for this. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think seeing the team and getting to talk with them, because I believe they have a different team than what they had before. So like the old Metalbone and paddles prior, completely different people that are in charge of things now. Talking to them, I can tell they care about pickleball, they're interested, and they are moving in the right direction.
Yes.
But I think there's certain things that are still being missed. Again, I just don't know. Maybe they haven't found the right combo yet for the bolt system, but I think the bolt system just needs to be ditched.
They're too attached and too married to the whole Metalbone idea and design. It's fantastic. It's very popular in padel, but it just is not going to work in pickleball. I think they just need to ditch the whole Metalbone bolt system design. It's just not going to work, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the way they're currently doing edgeless, I'm not saying that forever pickleball, the peak of technology, we can never have anything better, is a plastic edge guard. But the way edgeless is being done right now, I still just don't think it's there yet. Like that, I think they need to ditch, and I think it would also be good for them to consider as they branch out more, like most companies are starting to do, give people all the shape options so they're not just limited with one option. Maybe that is coming down the road at some point, but at least right now, they only launched with an elongated. I don't know. I think they're headed in the right direction. They're going to be taken more seriously. And something I said on Instagram is all of these, including the polymer paddles, they are not. The old Metalbone was so bad that if someone used it, I would say you could pick up almost anything outside of an Amazon special and it would be better.
Or a Z5.
Let's not get crazy now. But the EVA ones and the polymer ones, if someone was using it in a tournament, I could believe they could have good performance.
More respectable.
Yeah.
But still, like, not great.
I mean, this with the EVA ones, if you're a high-level player who can consistently nail the center, this would be deadly in the right hands. It has the potential, but it's just not going to be forgiving for things like resets.
Right.
And I guess real quick, let's just go over the polymer one. Again, I don't have a lot to say. It's just better than the old Metalbone, and it's the least controversial. It's not crazy hard hitting. It's got reasonable performance. That's really it. Like, it's fine.
The honeycomb one is probably my favorite out of all of them. The 16 with the bolts. I played well with it. I could use it. It had a plush enough feel, but with the bolts in it, its swing weight was so high and so heavy that I felt like I had some pretty decent put away power and drives were all right. But it is not anything special. It was not, and the sweet spot still wasn't great, but better than the EVA ones I felt. So,
agreed.
Yeah, the honeycomb ones were okay, but just so expensive. So expensive.
It just comes back to you can find better options for cheaper, or go up $10-$20 and you find considerably better options.
The best paddles in pickleball.
Paddle Tech, Engage, Joola, Carbon, Proton Flamingo, like all of them, going to perform objectively better in my opinion.
options for a little bit more money.
So anyways, guys, that's kind of the Metalbone again, just first impressions. Maybe we'll do more videos on it later. The fact that they don't have full USAP certification, I just don't know if it's worth spending the time on, and the fact that it may end up being more controversial, another kind of drawback. So that's the Metalbone. Better than last year.
Still bad.
I don't know if I'd say bad, but it's got a ways to go.
Yeah.
All right. You've made it to the kitchen. So this week, we've got some Q&A questions I wanted to go over. And then really quick this morning, I've played an Eastern grip for as long as I can remember in pickleball. I really can't even remember a time where I used a continental grip. But I've considered using a continental grip at the kitchen line because my one-handed backhand counter is so hard to get down and over the ball that I'm like, okay, this shot would probably be better if I just go to continental. So this morning I was messing with it, and part of the reason I haven't done it is, one, forehand rolls feel worse, forehand dinking feels worse, forehand drops feel worse, and then in my head, forehand drives would have been worse. But I messed with it today. Backhand counters felt a lot better. Forehand drives, oddly better. Dinking and drops, the verdict's still kind of out on that.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I was pleasantly surprised how much better certain shots felt, and it's definitely making me consider either switching my grip more at the kitchen line or at a minimum just getting used to certain things in continental, because I think it would improve other aspects of my game more than it would hurt it.
It's funny, we're going in opposite directions.
Yeah,
You're going to continental. I've switched my grip to semi-western.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah. It's way better.
But surely when you hit a one-handed backhand counter, you're switching your grip.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I switch my grip all the time. But from the baseline of my serves, my serve is actually like almost fully Western. I hold almost fully Western for my serve, and then I switch to a semi-Western for thirds and drives. And then once I get to the kitchen, it's more Eastern, and then I'll kind of flip-flop whether I'm dinking or hitting a roll or a forehand. I switch my grip all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of just where I just need to get used to it, like anticipate whatever shot is most likely to come, switch grip a little bit. I know Kwong does it all the time.
Yep.
And he's obviously fine. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I was always against it just because I felt, with the way the game is moving, you can generate more spin in Eastern. But, I mean, my drives were the thing that shocked me the most. I was expecting it would be so hard to close my paddle face that a lot of my drives would just be super high, but it was actually the opposite. A lot of my drives in Eastern recently have been very high, probably because I'm brushing the ball too aggressive. And then in Continental, I was like, wow, these are very, very low.
Mm-hmm. I think timing needs to be a little bit better with like Eastern or semi-Western grip.
Sure. So yeah, give it a shot, guys. If you haven't messed with it or you've had issues with some of the shots that I have, I'd recommend at least a drill session, just kind of mess around with it. Who knows when I get to the point where I could do this in a tournament. I'm definitely not there yet, but I was
going to say, not next week. Next week.
Next week, baby. All right. Q&A. We had a very funny first question. Would you rather beat 2 5-5 plus players in a duper game or beat Isaac in a gold final singles? What do you think my answer is?
Knowing you, you'd probably say beat me in a gold medal match for singles, but realistically, the smart choice would be beat the 5-5s because you're trying to get that duper bump.
You are right. I would take to beat you, and here's the reason. Beating you and going to family gatherings and saying I beat you in a gold final singles match, that's forever. Duper, high duper, that is not forever. That could go up, it could go down. I might not even get that big of a boost from beating the 5-5s, but for the rest of my life, I can say, yeah, Isaac, I beat him in
I am a little disappointed you didn't make it out of pool play at the Creator Cup down in Texas, and I didn't get to play you.
2 points away. That's all I needed.
So close. So close.
All I needed was 2 points. That was a big bummer. But yeah, I thought that whoever asked that was
a hilarious question.
Okay, next one. Are thermoformed paddles worth buying anymore when Engage and Paddle Tech won't core crush? And I do still think they're worth buying. One, because the sweet spots are larger. I think for a lot of people, that's a big benefit. The Paddle Techs and Engages, that's a drawback to theirs is the sweet spot size. But also, thermoform paddles just feel different. And some people like that feel more than they like a Gen 1 feel. But I do think in terms of overall longevity, the paddle playing similar, Paddle Tech and Engage, those get a huge bump in that regard. But a lot of people still love how thermoform paddles feel. So it's not as cut and dry as, oh, these don't break. Why don't we just use those, right? But if durability is a big concern, yeah, I'd choose that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of these, like the Paddle Tech and Engage, even though they don't break, for me personally, I do not like how they feel or play. So, and I still really like how thermoform paddles play. So I'm going to pick that over those, even though thermoform paddles are going to break. I just accept that that's for what I want. That's the sacrifice I have to make.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Completely agree. Then someone asked, what are your thoughts on Zane's comment on pros moving away from Selkirk? I actually didn't see this comment, but I did think it was an interesting thing worth talking about.
I've heard him say it all over social media, podcasts, Instagram, everywhere.
Yeah, I think to me, it's just kind of unfortunate because when I got into pickleball, I feel like Selkirk was top of the top. They had released the 002, which was top class, highest spin, most pop, most power. Power Air at the time was a good paddle, not so much anymore, but it's just been a consistent. The last paddle that I feel Selkirk released that was big and good for them, at least in the amateur market, was the Lux. Mm-hmm. And the last competitive pro paddle they released was a 002. Ever since then, it's just been this slow decline, and every release is a confusing release where they have another kind of control paddle. They have another kind of all-court paddle. Sometimes their SOK line is better than their pro line paddle. Like, for example, a lot of the SOK paddles have raw carbon fiber, while the pro paddles have spray-on grit. It's just been this weird decline, and I think pros are finally getting fed up with it. And we've seen when pros have switched off of the Selkirk paddle, the results have usually gone up. Dylan started using the YOLO, semifinal immediately.
Yeah. Well, it's really bad when you've got one of your pros literally switching in the middle of a match.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's really bad. I think the biggest issue, and we've talked with Selkirk before, where they just struggle, and it's difficult to pivot a very big company in direction of how fast paddle technology moves. And unfortunately, they're just too, again, kind of like the Metalbone, too married to certain designs, and they do not want to give up on it. The edgeless with their premium line of paddles and spray grit. Those two things. And throat hole. Those three things, I feel like they just need to ditch. I get it. Like they're super stuck to spray grit because without that, they wouldn't be able to do their colorful designs and make it look how they do. And they want it to be very aesthetically pleasing. But no one cares about that at the pro level, and no one cares about that at high performance. Like, that's not what we're after for that. The cheaper amateur beginner paddles, sure, make them look nice, spray grit, doesn't matter at that point. But for high level play, no one cares about that. The throat hole, kind of a gimmick, doesn't really do anything. Personally, I think it makes the paddle feel worse, honestly. And then edgeless. No one likes edgeless.
Well, we can't say no one, but I think in terms of performance, overall, it is a net negative.
100%. At least, especially the pro level.
Yeah.
Anyone playing with edgeless, it's either because they're getting paid a lot of money. Yeah. That's honestly the only reason.
Yeah. What's weird to me, too, is I feel like they could make whatever pro line of paddles, do raw carbon, do whatever it takes for the performance for the pros. Cool. The pros have those. If you want to spend a bunch of money and get that, you can do that. And then I know the Power Air came out at a time where it was $250. They're not going to probably just drop it to $175 or whatever. But take all those paddles, the Lux, the Power Air, and those with the fun designs and spray grit, and you want to make that your lower level line, but like give your pros something to help them perform better. Because it just feels like every single one of their pros wants to stop using the paddles. And to me, which feels like such a shame, because they, with all the resources they have, all the things they talk about with their lab, they clearly understand a lot of the science behind paddles, but then they just completely miss on what the market wants. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy to me.
And it's crazy. They used to have so many pros and own like everybody, and now it's starting to look like they're going to have nobody.
Oh, and Joola feels like is becoming what Selkirk was.
Exactly. Joola went straight for just pure performance, and because of that, Selkirk lost everyone.
Yeah.
They used to have Paris. They used to have Dylan. They used to have all these pros, and now no one wants. Tyson, that's another big one. Yeah. I'm sure James is going to leave. Like, no one wants to use these Selkirk paddles anymore. Heck, people are saying Catherine was dropped by Annalie because she uses a Selkirk paddle. Is that true? Don't really know, but that's a lot of people think that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of similar take is it just doesn't make sense why they can't make a better paddle. It's just kind of wild.
And if they start to do it now, it just feels late.
Yeah.
Like they've already lost everybody.
For sure. All right. So I wanted to talk about this in the kitchen because I've been getting DMs about this, and there have started to be more posts about the tariffs. I want to be very clear about this. I'm not an expert in tariffs. I've been following this fairly closely. I've been trying to stay up to date and how this might impact the paddle industry. But again, I'm not an expert. I don't want to get into politics. I don't want to see any political comments down in the comments,
Please
guys.
don't. Yeah.
It's not about that. This is purely just about how is this going to impact the paddle market and some numbers that I was running and thinking about because, and this also, again, is not about what paddle prices should be or should not be. I think it's well established. There are a lot of paddles that are way more expensive than they should be. There's no question about that. But that is not the debate we're talking about today. So, okay. I wanted to talk about the business finances because I think it's more complicated than a lot of people think. You know, CRBN kind of came out and made a statement that was like, hey, look, prices are not going up right now. But given that things are pretty unstable and we don't really know where things are going, the prices might go up. And it's not great, but that might be what happened. And then other brands have kind of started to chime in and say, yeah, this is a possibility. We're looking into it. We don't really know what's happening. And I saw a lot of comments that just went, these companies have like a bajillion% margin. They should be able to absorb this. Prices shouldn't go up. There's no way paddles need to be more expensive. So I was like, okay, let's just do some math.
It's a big misconception.
Yeah, I think there are some cases where that can be true, but I don't think it's the case a lot of times. So let's take a $200 paddle, for example. You're going to have a 25%, 30% tax rate for your business. Okay, let's just say it's 25%. On a $200 paddle, you're looking at $50. Then you have a 10% discount for the customer. On a $200 paddle, that's $20. Then you're going to have 10 to 15% that you pay to an affiliate, people like us. That's another $20. Paddle cost landed. This is an interesting number. All the people that I've talked to about paddles by the time they are landed are usually more expensive than what you see on Facebook or Reddit. A lot of times you'll hear numbers like it's only $5 to $15 landed. Most of the times the numbers that I hear for a paddle cost landed anywhere between $25 and $35. That number can vary. It is not a locked in number. I have no doubt that there are paddles that you can get for $15 or less. However, those might be something that's like a cheaper polymer Gen 1 fiberglass paddle or something like that.
Depends on packaging.
There's a lot of things that could drive that cost up, but the averages that I have heard probably going to be anywhere between $20, $35, 25, 35, somewhere in there. So let's say with the 145% tariff, that price is now going to be, let's just say on the low end, $60 after the tariff. Okay? Keep that number in mind. We'll come back and do all of this. Now, if you are a business that has ad spend and you're running ads heavily, doing a little bit of research on this, and I've heard some different numbers, but that's probably going to be anywhere between $20 and $60 to acquire a customer running ads. Okay? So if you're keeping track in your head, $50, $20, $60 post-tariff, and then let's just be nice and say $30 to acquire a customer instead of $50 or $60. Out of $200, you're left over with $20. That $20 needs to go towards business operations, things like software subscriptions, shipping, packaging, returns and refunds, legal services, insurance, accountants, building lease, employees, marketing costs, and all these other things. So you're going to need a lot of volume at $20 if you want to make that work. Now, I'm not saying that is a horribly low margin. I'm not saying that's a high margin. Just is what it is. And now let's take a $100 paddle. You've got a 25% tax rate, $25. Discount on $100 paddles, usually $10. Affiliate, usually 10%. So it's going to be another $10. Paddle cost landed, if we go post-tariff, 145%, say $60. And then ad spend to acquire a customer, $30. You now have negative $35.
Yep.
And now there are different ways you can approach this, right? You're going to have companies like Vatic. They don't advertise a lot. So that cost to advertise, you can kind of remove that. Even if you remove $30, you're still at negative $5 on that. And then I know companies like Friday, they tend to run a lot more ads. So they're going to have cost to acquire those customers through ads. So they might be hurting more than Vatic. Someone who sells paddles out of their garage, very small business, they don't have a lot of overhead, right? They have their house. They're not paying for a business lease. They may not have as many software subscriptions. They may not have employees. Like, there is a world where it is possible to still sell that paddle at $100, but for certain companies, it's probably going to get a lot more difficult to do that. Mm-hmm. So all of that to say, things are very uncertain. Who knows if tariffs go higher? Who knows if tariffs get dropped? There are going to be companies that, in theory, can probably absorb the blow a lot better. You know, maybe some of the more premium paddles out there. But I think the $100 paddles are really going to struggle. And that's why I find it very interesting with Vatic that they're still able to do the Saga at $129.99. But I don't know their back-end costs. I don't know. There's a lot of variables going on. But just as I run some of the numbers myself, that's what I'm seeing. And I can see why paddles are potentially going to go up if margins go that low. Yeah. Or, you know, when you're talking negative, that's not great.
Yeah, it's pretty bad for business if you're in the red.
Yeah. So, and you know, the U.S. companies might have a big advantage because I already know. I think I've seen some posts. I can't remember if Paddle Tech or if it was Engaged, but I've seen some posts that are like, yeah, these aren't going to affect us. Mm-hmm. We'll be fine. So maybe if all the other brands, let's just hypothetically say let's just say you've got a Vatic that's now $200. You've got a Joola that's $350. You've got all these paddles, $350, $400 somewhere there. Well, a Paddle Tech at $260, that's really appealing if their price doesn't change at all.
Right.
I don't know. It's a confusing time. I don't think there's an easy answer. I know people are going to be plenty opinionated about this. I've already seen plenty of posts that are like, oh, it's this easy. It's not this easy. Talking to some of these owners, I'd err on the side of it's not that simple.
Yeah, it's really not that simple. And again, take everything we're saying with a grain of salt because we do not claim to be experts. We're not experts. This is just kind of our own study on this and figuring it out.
This is from talking to some of these owners about some of these costs, and it's also doing some of the research, and then also just, you know, having been self-employed for, I don't know, what is this, like 10, 12 years now, knowing how some of the costs go there. So I don't know.
And then who knows? All this could go away like that.
Yeah.
So
that'd be great. And then maybe no one has to worry.
Exactly. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't do any like fear mongering and be like, oh, you gotta go buy paddles now, guys. The prices are gonna jump. No one has any idea. The business owners don't have any idea. And I think that's what's scary for a lot of them is it's like, what do we do? I know there are companies that are holding their shipping containers because they don't want to pay the tariff right now. Mm-hmm. So they're saying, don't ship that to us because it might change.
Right.
We get it cheaper. Yeah, it's complicated.
Crazy times. It's crazy.
Definitely crazy times. Hopefully, for the sake of everyone, I really hope prices don't go bananas.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last thing we're going to say before we sign off here is, what's your take on UPA certification and dual certification? This is interesting because I feel like the UPA certification gets talked about a lot these days, but it literally does not matter for 99.99999% of people. Mm-hmm. It is pros on the PPA Pro Tour. That is the only person it matters for. If you're trying to play qualifiers, like if you go and play qualify now, yeah, you're not going to be able to use the Shogun because it's not.
So yeah, for the small amount of people either playing pro or playing qualifiers and stuff, yeah, it kind of sucks. Like for me, it really sucks. Like I would much rather use the Shogun than any currently UPA approved paddle. Mm-hmm. So kind of sucks for me. But again, that's such a small amount of people.
Yeah. So it's weird to me that it gets talked about in a way that matters to amateurs because in theory it shouldn't.
Right.
The only one that matters for an amateur is the USAP certification. And this is where I think it gets kind of weird. There's been a lot of debate about this and I don't really feel like joining in on it, but it's just interesting that it's supposed to be for pros, but now you have companies that are, I mean, take the Metalbone, for example. It's UPA approved. They're selling that paddle. If UPA-A didn't exist like a year and a half ago, and that paddle comes out, people would just say that's a vice. Oh, it's an illegal paddle that hits too hard. But now that there's a governing body that governs the game for the pro game, people go, oh, well, it's fine, right? So it's just kind of weird that it is bleeding into the amateur game when that wasn't the goal of it.
wasn't the goal. It's not supposed to be the goal. And Jason Aspis, with a lot of questions that he's gotten, always says, well, we're only governing the pro game. That's all we care about. That's all we're worried about. But realistically, companies are marketing UPA approval, and amateurs are thinking about it, and it does affect the amateur market quite a bit. Even though their goal and what Jason says is, oh, well, we're only focused on the pro game.
Yeah, and I think the thing that has made it probably the most messy, in my opinion, is the grit part of it. I mean, I see people in my Discord, I see people in other forums online where they go, well, I want the UPA version because it's got more grit.
Exactly.
So it's this weird thing where it's like kind of skirting how USAP rules are. And look, I'm not saying that means USAP is right. For all we know, the grit rules for UPA, it's not going to hurt the game at all, and that'll be completely fine. I'm not opposed to reconsidering what those rules should be. All I'm saying is that it's going to cause a confusion of what paddle people should use, what certification they do have to care about, what don't they have to care about. And I think largely the UPA certification does not matter unless you're a pro, which is a very small group of people.
Very, very small.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on dual certification and how it's been going. Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot. But anyways, thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next week. We are headed to the U.S. Open. We actually might have to record a podcast kind of early because we leave on Sunday.
Yeah, might record it early and release it later when we're down there. But if you guys see us in Florida, come say hi. Would love to see everyone down there, and excited to be in Florida.
Yeah, can't wait. We'll catch you guys later.
Peace.